Cobra, the Sheriff of Nottingham, Mr. I had that round even, Carl Froch, has weighed in and claims that he's giving Eubank Jr. a good chance of beating Gennady Golovkin, but says that he may lose to Liam Smith on Saturday. I find this to be interesting. Carl Froch's take, some people, they don't really care for what Mr. Froch has to say, and I get that. But, I'm going to play devil's advocate. I'm going to hear Froch out here. He's done this article on Sky Sports. I believe it's authored by him. I'll leave this linked in the description box below if you want to check it out for yourself. To sum it up, he's basically saying that there's the potential that Eubank Jr. maybe overlooks Liam Smith and finds himself in a sticky situation, maybe even loses the fight. I believe he hasn't even committed to a prediction, but he could be doing the company man act and trying to drum up some more ambiguity, maybe push up those pay-per-view sales a little bit. But what I find interesting is his take on a potential Golovkin versus Eubank Jr. fight. And now I want to play devil's advocate here because, let's be real, Carl Froch has his own history with Gennady Golovkin. I believe it was 2015 when there were talks about a Golovkin-Froch fight. At least that's the most recent time. And maybe that's just the most notable, I want to say, 2015. And Froch very much got into competitor mode. And even back then, he was a salty dog, to say the least. And I feel like he's maybe carried some of that salt forward into 2023. Because I've never seen Froch really leave that competitor mode when talking about Gennady Golovkin. And now, look, that's his prerogative. But I think it does maybe colour his perception of Golovkin as a fighter and his ability. So I do take this, the opinion of Carl Froch with a pinch of salt. However, I think this presents an interesting question because, of course, Eubank Jr. has to win on Saturday, and I've done a pre-fight video. At the time of recording this video, that was my most recent one, so if you haven't checked it out, you should find it at the top of the uploads list, and you can find out who I'm picking for Eubank Jr. versus Smith. But nevertheless, in the lead up to fights, it is natural for us, the boxing public, to ask what's next for an opponent or a fighter should they win their upcoming fight. And I think a Golovkin-Eubank Jr. fight is not only realistic, but quite interesting. Realistic in the sense where these guys kind of have history. We all know that Eubank Jr. was supposed to fight Golovkin, or he was penciled in to fight Golovkin in September of 2016. Famously lost his pen, in stepped Kell Brook, and received what many referred to as a career-ending beating. And but it seemed like it was going to go ahead. It seemed like it was, okay, this is Eubank Jr.'s big chance to step up for a portion of the middleweight title. And then there's always been talks. Golovkin has always been a name that Eubank Jr. has mentioned. I don't know how sincere he's been, but you'd imagine that should he win against Smith, he needs to move on to bigger and better things. He's 33 years old now. Still isn't a legitimate champion. Yeah, he's held the IBO, middleweight and super middleweight, and the WBA interim. Like, yeah, who cares? We want to see this guy in against, really test his mettle against a legitimate champion. And Carl Froch talks about primarily the elephant in the room when it comes to Golovkin, his age. He's over 40 years old now. Talks about how Golovkin's probably slower than ever, not as sharp mentally in terms of his reflexes going. Not as sharp mentally, I make him sound like he's retarding over the years. But he gives Eubank Jr. a good shot of beating him should he come through Liam Smith, which, is a competitive fight on paper. I'm not going to give any spoilers for my pre-fight prediction. Go and check it out. But if anything, I want to present this question to you guys. If Chris Eubank Jr. comes through Liam Smith, looks convincing in doing so, and there's a proposed Golovkin fight, how would you feel in terms of picking a winner? Because I'd be honest, I'd give Eubank Jr. a much better chance of beating Golovkin now than I did back in 2016. Back in 2016, I just felt like Gennady Golovkin would have splattered him all over the ring. And, we factor in, of course, time. That was, what, 7 years ago, nearly 6.5 years ago. Golovkin has aged, he's got more miles on the clock, more wear and tear. Eubank Jr. Has gone for a bit of a transition from a stylistic perspective. And some people would say maybe a personality perspective as well, psychologically. I'm not sure if I'd agree with that. I think people have just started to see Eubank Jr. in a new light and have warmed to him a bit more rather than him changing as a person. But maybe he's had more of a chance to develop his confidence. And it does make the fight interesting, I feel. And of course, we want to see someone like Eubank go for a title and really see, okay, how good are you? You've lost to Billy Joe Saunders, you've lost to George Groves, you've beaten James DeGale, but James DeGale was shot. You've beaten Liam Williams, but Liam Williams, his punch resistant looked like it had gone. Technically looked quite good in that fight for my money. But after Liam Smith, you want to see another step up. And, talking about that fight, obviously I'm asking you guys for your opinion, but I certainly give Eubank Jr. a better chance than I would have back in 2016. However, I still think Gennady Golovkin would just be a bit too much. And I know he's older. I know he's not as sharp as he used to be, but the age, as I say, is the elephant in the room. However, Golovkin, I don't think he's a fighter who really relies on something like athleticism, which definitely does decline with age. Because Golovkin, even though he's an older fighter, a lot of miles on the clock, he's got bags of experience as an amateur and as a pro, and he's got the technique that's come along with that. And as I say, I don't see Golovkin relying on athleticism, but he does rely on his technique, and technique rarely fails you in these latter stages of your career, unless you suffer some kind of injury or you have recurring issues that physically alter and impact the way you move. From what I can see, Golovkin doesn't seem to have that issue. And yeah, he's had tough fights recently. I wouldn't say that the Canelo third fight was tough. He was just kind of shut out of the fight overall. The Murata fight was tough, but Murata's big guy, crude, but knows how to impose himself. And even then, Golovkin was able to still weather the tough moments in that fight and get Eubank Jr. Get Murata under manners with the jab and break him down quite dramatically. There is also the Derevianchenko, but those guys aren't Eubank Jr. And now, in Eubank Jr.'s favour, to play devil's advocate and be objective, I definitely 100% see how Eubank Jr.'s strengths can be used to really take advantage of Golovkin's weaknesses, because Golovkin is someone who can be overwhelmed by offense. He's a great technician, but he still does have his limitations. He's got a very select set of skills. But then I kind of see Eubank Jr. as being the same way. I describe Eubank Jr.'s skills and strengths as being very situational. I don't think he's the most versatile fighter. I think he's working on it, but you can certainly see where Eubank Jr.'s strengths lie in the type of fight as well. Whereas Gennady Golovkin, I think, over the course of his career, shown a bit more versatility. Now, he doesn't have a massive amount of versatility like fighters of the past, but you can see how Golovkin does have other ideas up his sleeves, against the likes of David Lemieux, who, if Golovkin was to press him like he did with many other opponents, would have played into Lemieux's hands. And Lemieux was a big puncher. So what did he do? He patterned him behind the jab, just completely controlled him. And that's what Golovkin can do. He can not only control a fight with a jab, but he can bust you up with it at the same time, so you're still in danger. I'm not sure how Eubank Jr. could contend with that. Although I do acknowledge that if Eubank Jr. was able to get inside where he likes to work, it could be a rough fight for Gennady Golovkin. I can actually envisage how Eubank Jr. would win. I'm just not sure how confident I am in it. But I'm getting into the kind of nitty gritty of a matchup between those two. But I definitely think it's something interesting and something worth exploring, because this could be a fight next for Eubank Jr. should he come through against Liam Smith. But I've said my piece. Let me know what you guys think. Eubank Jr., should he beat Liam Smith on Saturday, look convincing in doing so, how do you think he fares against Gennadiy Golovkin, let's say summer 2023? Who would you be picking and why? And also, if you haven't checked out my pre-fight video for Eubank Jr. versus Smith, check it out, as I say. Hopefully I haven't given any spoilers in this video. I don't think I have. But yeah. And also, if you want to read this article for yourself by Mr. Carl Froch, famously too big and too strong for Gennadiy Golovkin, I'll leave it linked in the description box below. You can check out for yourself. But for now, people, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you on the next video.